It is now my great pleasure to introduce the first panel to you and our first moderator. So could I ask our moderator to come up here? And with this, I give you the floor to one of the best moderators we ever have in our program. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you very much. I think I have the microphone, so I will not need this. Thank you very much. It's great to be here. And I would like to invite this on stage Ambassador Michael Reifenstuel. He's the Director for Southeast Europe, Turkey, EFTA, States, OSCE, and Council of Europe at the German Federal Foreign Office. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for being with us.
By the way, are we already on? Yes. I have to correct one remark. I'm not covering CEFTA states. I don't know how it happened.
We'll see. Well, there might be some similarities there, so we will discover it. So I'm really honored to be back in Berlin. We were just talking with the ambassador. I'm proud to have been part of the Berlin Process Civil Society meetings for the last few years. I've been part of the working groups. I know how much Aspen Institute Germany, but also Southeast Europe Association have put not just in this event, but over the years, and the importance that they have given to the EU integration of the Western Balkans using one of the pillars such as the Berlin process. Would like to, the way that we're going to have a conversation with Ambassador Reifenstuel here, and then, as always, like we do, we will open it up to the questions of the audience, and we'll also invite participants to ask their questions, and there's, as you see, there's an empty chair on that purpose. Ambassador, let's start with you. We had very good conversations yesterday. Went from the very beginning of the Berlin process, trying to understand what have been some of the main achievements of the process, what will be the future, what are we expecting next week that will happen. It's the 10th anniversary, so are we going to see a celebration of that anniversary too, or it will be just an anniversary? So these are some of the questions that I think we were raising yesterday and would like to discover a little bit more from you. So if I would ask you, what are the top 3 achievements of the Berlin process over the years, over the last 10 years? What will they be?
Difficult question, huh? Because I think it very much depends on your personal pick, what you take. But let me make two remarks. First of all, many thanks. Originally, and it was intended that I should speak to you. And I said, for me, it's much more interesting if I don't deliver you a speech that has written somebody else anyway, not myself, but that we have some kind of a discussion. Because for us, really the value of this kind of events is that we get a feeling what are your concerns, what are your questions, what is your criticism. Yeah? And that's why I'm very happy that we do have this interactive session. When you ask what are the most important achievements of the Berlin process, probably I should play the ball back. You told me you are for 10 years in the Berlin process, so I'm doing this now for 1.5 years. I personally, if I take 3 picks, I would say one thing what is really important and what is very different to any other regional initiatives that we have seen over the years, is that simply the Berlin process is inclusive. Yeah? For us, it was always very, very clear it must be all Web 6. We don't want to have a process where there is some pick and choose and some other countries are left out. But for us, one fundamental principle is really we want to have inclusivity. That means either we do it with all 6, or we don't achieve it, even if sometimes in the sequencing we can't achieve this. The second element, what I think really makes the Berlin process very, very unique is because it's not only a ministerial process, yeah, where you have a summit and foreign ministers, economic ministers, finance ministers, ministers of interior, and so on, where you don't only have the governments involved, but you do have what is for us very important, we have you involved, civil society, because we think it's one of the real keys to move if I may say so, the Web 6 forward. We have an element integrated that covers also science, culture. We have the youth forum, what I think is really important because it's the work and their ideas for the next generation. So I think what is really unique about the Berlin process, and this is not an achievement as such, but that we have a very, very broad-based process, not only government to government, but including people to people, including specialists, but also including civil society, what I think is one of the most important elements as driver of a region for new ideas, for getting out of the maybe sometimes political deadlocks what we are facing, and that we have the youth inside. And the third one, to mention something very concrete, and I think you have heard that we will achieve finally, after a couple of years, deblocking CEFTA, what I think is a really major achievement, first of all, because it enables us that 8-10 agreements actually that within the common regional market that are actually ready, that they finally can be implemented. And I think it's also important, especially for Kosovo, if you look to it, that now finally they will not be represented anymore by UNMIK, but they will be doing themselves. And the third element, what I think is important, that we finally have started to open up the border between Serbia and Kosovo for Serbian goods. So I think that this is a real major achievement. But there will be, you will see, with regard to the agenda, there will be many more things to come.
Well, thank you, Ambassador. It was difficult to say 3 top things only. I think I'll add a fourth that everyone will agree here, the political commitment to the region, to the EU integration of the region. We tend to forget, but we should remember that back 10 years ago, we had from the Juncker Commission the freezing of the enlargement process. So in a certain way, the political commitment of the Berlin process was very important to keep the enlargement hope in the Western Balkans during some difficult times. So you mentioned also, and I think you explained what we're expecting next week during the summit. How do you mentioned the role of civil society. How do you include the civil society and forums like this, the Civil Society Forum, their recommendations in the priorities of the Berlin process, or in what way the youth engagement is being prioritized in the priorities of the Berlin process, but also mobilized?
I think actually both the civil society recommendations, but also what actually the Youth Forum, what RICO is doing, plays for us a very significant agenda, because we are going through the recommendations. We see first of all internally how we could integrate this, implement this also in the political process. So for us, many of the ideas, I think over the 10 years, what we have done in specific areas was actually born also with ideas from civil society and also from the Civil Society Forum. So for us, even if it may be that sometimes it doesn't look like immediately it's implemented, but we take this very serious because one of our main tasks, I think, is you mentioned a bit of the history of the Berlin process. I mean, the Berlin process, 2014, when it was started, I think it was 3 elements with regard to prepare the ground for European Union integration. But the second pillar, what is quite often forgotten, is for us also very important that we get intra-regional cooperation strengthened, that we get an intra-regional integration of the countries. And that's what we are also seeing in the Berlin process in many elements. And the third element actually of the Berlin process always was that we also want to strengthen, that's now sometimes a big word, good neighborly relations. And we are, for example, happy that the Web 6 that they also agreed themselves on a declaration on friendly and good neighborly relations. So actually it's all 3. What I don't like basically is the word saying, what some people are saying, Berlin process was a surrogate for EU integration, because that's definitely not for us. It's really the ground where we can prepare, especially also in the economic area, and we have done this in many areas, where we can prepare the ground for EU integration. But all three elements are really important for us.
Well, thank you very much.
Now you should say I didn't answer your question.
So one of the biggest challenges with the Western Balkans is the lack of economic convergence with Western European countries. Depending how you see that on purchasing power parity, on real money, real US dollars, it could be up to only 15% of the GDP per capita average of the European Union. So one of the main issues is really more funding to the region to implement these important projects. So I'll ask you a difficult question. That has been, there's been a lot of conversation also in the region around that. Can you tell us something about the funding, how much money the German government, but how does that work in terms of funding that have gone to the region to implement those important initiatives?
Yeah. To be very frank, no. For a very simple reason, because the Berlin process, it's not an institution, it's not an organization. Yeah? If it were an organization, we would have a budget line that says, I don't know, 5 million, 50 million, 100 million euro. But the Berlin process, it's a process with so many elements where also the funding is coming from different budget lines, but also from partners, other states that are also involved in the Berlin process. So one of our weakness, but I made a promise beforehand that we will try to find out. One of our weaknesses is, I think at the moment, nobody really could say in 10 years we have spent this and this many million euro for the Berlin process. At least Niels, he's really our specialist, the head of the Western Balkans department. I don't think that we have any figure.
Experts in the room here, but we don't have to figure.
Okay, so sorry, this I won't be able. But if speaking about economic convergence, something what we really attach importance to is, but there will be also a panel, I guess, going deeper into this, is the whole issue of the growth plan and also its four pillars. For me personally, it's not only about the growth facility, that means about the money getting into the region, but I think especially pillar one, where you try to work on elements that bring tangible, visible progress for the people in the region. I think, and this is even much more important, and that's also what we tried to focus on within the Berlin process, that we have elements that really give the people on the ground the feeling we are coming closer to the European Union, because we are aware that, of course, the frustration with the people in the region is high. Many of the countries have applied now for quite a long time. So I think it's also our task, but not only, it's also up for the governments, by the way, in the region. But it's really also our task to show that there is tangible progress with every step that you're getting closer to the European Union. It's not only about money.
And Ambassador, as you pointed out, and we were discussing that, I believe that also for the growth plan, I think the structure, especially when it comes to regional economic cooperation, has been laid down by the Berlin process through the Common Regional Market 1 and then 2. So I think I see a lot, linkages there between the growth plan and the Berlin process.
We never would take the arrogance to say that we prepared the ground, but we
I
try
said that. You didn't say that.
We try to be helpful.
So there was a recommendation yesterday, I think it's also in the book, that the Berlin process need to be somehow institutionalized. What do you think about that?
I mean, this is one of the questions we were discussing, I think, for a couple of years back and forth. The proposal was tabled again and again. I think you can argue in favor and against it. One of the real strengths, I think, of the Berlin process is that we have really attached it, that the Chancellor's office is in the lead of the whole process, and then you do have of every country the share pass. So that means the advantage is really that we have the possibility from the political side really to move the process forward, because they do know all the Western Balkan countries, they do know if an initiative is coming, the government, the German government is standing really behind it. I think in this regard, sometimes you can have much more leverage than if you have a normal institutionalized secretariat that is really giving the impulse. But I do know that there are also disadvantages to this process. I personally do have the advantage, do have the preference that we really leave it without a secretariat function, because I think that the political impetus we can give to the process this way, especially you can see it this time with the CEFTA deblocking. Yeah, that this was really a political, how shall I say, this was a political process, to put it very neutral, what I think would never have happened if it would have been based at a secretariat, etc. So my own preference would be to leave it like this.
In terms of political commitment.
Political commitment, but also weight. You simply, it makes a difference. It makes a difference if sometimes government in the region knows this is coming from the chancellor or from the foreign minister, or whether it's just an initiative by the secretariat. And it sometimes also makes a difference if we try to make clear, like this time with the 10th anniversary, we want to have a tangible result. And we go high risk to get this tangible result, and it will be partly painful for some of the actors, but we really want to have for the anniversary something. And I think this, for example, would never have worked. Manuel Sarrazin did a marvelous job. He will come afterwards. Yeah, he was really in the driver's seat and did this with unbelievable efforts and traveling all the time through the region. But without this kind of political impetus, also in the region that they do know, he has the backing of the chancellor, he has the backing of the foreign minister, I think it never would have worked. So this is one example that shows the political weight really can make a difference.
Thank you. Last question before I open it up for questions from the audience, and please, if someone would like also to come and take the floor here. Where do you see the Berlin process going in the next 10 years? And do you see the countries of the region being members of the European Union?
Yeah. So normally we say diplomats should do all but never look into the future, what might happen or what might not happen. So, but first of all, I think Berlin process will continue. I think it should really, from this first pillar I mentioned, continue to support the process for the Web 6 getting closer to the European Union. Our government, both the Chancellor, the Foreign Minister and many others, we made very clear we do see the Western Balkan 6 as part of the European Union. We want to see them in. We think it's for many reasons one could discuss ours for this, both in the interest for the region, but also in the interest for the European Union. But it's a two-way street. Yeah? So you know this very famous sentence that we still have a merit-based approach. So it's simply important that there's not a feeling now because of this very, there's this word because of geopolitical necessities. Yeah, that simply there's the feeling in the region now anyway it's a free ride because it cannot only be done that the so-called troika, so Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia are moving forward, but it must be also the Western Balkans. This alone is not sufficient. It must be clear it still is a merit-based approach, but we want to see all of the Western Balkan countries in the European Union, part of the family.
Well, thank you, Ambassador. Please. The microphone here, please.
Sie können auch gerne hochkommen.
Okay,
Kommen Sie doch ruhig hoch. Kommen Sie.
You can have, yeah.
Good morning, Ambassador. And I'm Lutfi Dervish. I'm a journalist based in Tirana. Basically, it's the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not your fault.
You can try again.
Now it should work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. The mic didn't work. Otherwise, I would have heard an applaud. Yeah, Ambassador, it's almost the same question, but a little bit more cynical. One of the main objectives of the Berlin process has been to bring the Balkan region closer to the EU. If we were to measure the success, by the need to eventually phase out the process, what would be the key factors? What would be the key elements? And 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 what signifying that its main goal has been achieved. How close do you believe we are to that point? Because frankly speaking, I didn't like the question about next 10 years.
That's why it was related to the EU integration process.
You mean more 27 by 27?
So,
I think it's difficult to give a general answer, because it does not only depend on the willingness and the readiness, the preparedness of the European Union, but it also simply depends on the member states. It also depends on the Western Balkan states. I personally, there's sometimes a talk that it should be done in a package or it should be done individually. I personally, I'm a very strong supporter of the approach, merit-based. That's not an empty phrase, yeah? That it really should be based on the progress of the individual countries. So, for example, if now, let me just pick one or two out. If now, for example, Montenegro is moving forward, I think we would be most happy to support the country if we have the feeling they are really on the right track, they are really willing to do their homework. I mean, you know that they have opened all of the chapters in clusters, so if some can be closed, that's very good. I think we are very much happy to speed up the process. Yeah? But I personally would always say it really must be still based on the merits and not just taking all in or all out. I think it would be also not very conducive to the countries if they get the feeling anyway, whatever we do or what we don't do, there will be in or out. It must be really based on the performance. But I think, and that's the difference, I think really to the 10 years when you mentioned since Juncker made his speech, there is a real willingness to have the Western Balkan countries in. There's a real willingness, and I personally think the next couple of years is a really historic window. But this window must be also used by the governments in the region. It's not only up to us.
yeah, but if you allow me just a follow-up question. In the Thessaloniki summit, June 2003, so there was a clear promise that the destination of the countries of the region is in the EU. But considering 90s, and now we are in 2023, and the next 10 years, what do you think?
No,
Why it's so difficult? So it's getting more than 3 decades for the Balkan to be part of the EU, considering that Cold War, it's almost 4 decades.
Yes, I think you know the answer much better than I can formulate it, because perhaps it may be also that we had a couple of years where there was the appetite for an enlargement round, relatively minor, to put it very mildly, and that's what I tried to make clear. I really think this has really changed. It's not only speak by the politicians, including the German government. It's really meant seriously. There was a little step where one could have seen this when there was the question of the formal opening of the accession negotiations for Bosnia-Herzegovina. I think most countries would have expected that the German government, as always, is very, very hesitant in saying, well, if you look on the records, especially with Bosnia-Herzegovina, fundamentals, this is a disaster. We were one of the governments actively saying, we think it's the right time to open it. Not because they had a wonderful, magnificent performance, but we had finally a government where we had the feeling after a couple of years when nothing were happening, at least they were willing to move forward. So I think this is really serious by the German government. We want to get the Balkans in, but we are not a big fan of naming years. Yeah, I mean, if Montenegro is doing his job and 27 by 27, I would say personally, fine, wonderful. Sorry?
28.
28 by 28. So we are very grateful for this 1 year more. No, it's true, 27.
But still remains 27.
No, you are correct. 27 was now coming by a different foreign minister, but I don't mention his name.
Well, thank you, Mr.
If you allow me, that's not a question for diplomat, but I'm making it anyway. The Prime Minister of Albania said recently in the region that thanks to Putin and the war in Ukraine, Europe is waking up and turning the attention to the Balkan. Do you agree with that?
I think it doesn't matter whether somebody was waking up or whether Putin was doing anything. I think important for the region is we have now a situation where we think it is very clear that we want to have not only marching the trio ahead, but we also want that actually the Western Balkan countries are marching ahead. I think it doesn't bring so very much, if you start discussing why exactly this was now happening, then it also gets difficult partly for us. But we do see, because of a new geostrategic, geopolitical environment, the necessity to speed up the EU integration process. And I think the countries in the region should make use of it. And it's, by the way, it's not only for the EU. The same is true, even much more important if it comes to NATO. Yeah? I mean, we have a couple of NATO countries in the Western Balkans. Because if you go all to this kind of hybrid threats, this is a really important topic where we can see the countries working with NATO, they are simply much better prepared.
Well, thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Mr. Dervishi, please. You had two interviewers here.
Okay, my name is Valbona. I come from a Swiss organization which is supporting Western Balkan, named the Regional Advocacy Network. I wanted to cross-check with you two theses. One which is one of my takeaways of the previous day, and another one which is the topic of the second half day today. The first one has to do with labor mobility. Up to now, if the growth plan should be materialized on its promise, we need proper labor hand to be engaged in this plan in the whole Western Balkan. What's currently happening, and especially with Germany, is not only the brain drain, but even the labor drain.
But partly also Switzerland, by the way.
Yes, but we have another, in Switzerland, there is another policy about migration. That is the difference. So up to now, the question is, up to now, this is treated through bilateral agreements between states. So my question is it the time to have a regional coalition of Western Balkan and starting to negotiate with EU about the labor, I call gap, whatever you name it?
Sorry, and I have to ask, if you say labor gap, that means to keep the
to
people
keep,
in the region.
To keep the people in the region.
In the region. I think that there will be also one element actually on migration policy that will also get into the summit results. But on this one, I'm speaking now very personally. I mean, if we want to get this region fit for development, one of the most important things is that we create conditions that people are willing to stay. Very simple.
Or go back.
Or go back, absolutely, no, absolutely, or go back. And one of the challenges, and I fully agree, this you can see in Germany, that somehow Germany is quite attractive for the region. Now I would say this is not only our fault, but also the fault of the politicians in the region. But I agree with you that it is really important that we do find new mechanisms, for example, for circular migration, that also knowledge is flowing back into the region. There are other countries and other regions in the world where this works much better. So I fully agree with you. Part of the task, when we really want to make the Balkans fit for the EU, is also that we find means and ways that it is attractive to stay for the people as an alternative in the region and not only migrate to Germany or migrate to Switzerland. But I don't have, to be very frank, I don't have yet the key for it, because this is a very complicated issue. But we are aware also in the government that, and you know, we need the labor, and it's really important for Germany. but we have to find ways and means that actually really this is getting somehow much more also to the benefit of the countries, and not only by money return like it is in some of the countries.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
We'll take a third question because we only have
It's
1
fine.
minute. Thank you so much. You can speak from there because we only have 1 minute.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The second thesis I will treat with colleagues.
Yes. Please.
Thank you. I'm Kori Udovički from the Center for Advanced Economic Studies in Belgrade, which is focused on economics, and I'll try to be really fast. I remember 2014, when the Berlin process started, how strong, in my opinion, and important the effect of it was, exactly because of the focus on economic prosperity. This is also continues to be, after 10 years, the focus of Serbia's government, unfortunately not related to improving institutional quality related to it. But I have to say, I think that government has proved that economic growth...
please.
Anyway,
Yeah.
yes. Now, the fundamental question is, as time goes by, the political economy, the state can become more and more captured. Could the Berlin process, would you consider the Berlin process a good instrument to develop ways of helping independent economic actors, for example, small and medium enterprises, receive assistance more directly from the EU? The EU has very complex mechanisms. It cannot change. But working together with a mechanism that's flexible like the Berlin process, there is a lot of funding in the EU. It is a recommendation that we've given.
Yes, that's one of the recommendations.
Previous, and I would like, I'm using this opportunity to, in fact, advocate for this, because I think there are ways, and I think as the accession process lasts, it can end up making a big difference to the sincerity of the interest of a country to go into the European Union, to truly integrate.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm very grateful for the question. That's why I said at the very beginning I really want to have a dialogue. I can't give you a really good answer at the moment, but I'm very much willing that we take it with us, yeah, and work on it. I mean, we do have this also elements like a business forum, etc., but especially with the aspect of state capture, without going now too much into detail and so on. I fully understand your point. We will look into it.
Thank you. That's what I was hoping.
Well, and what is very important, and now still, everybody has the book of recommendations. It's grown also from the civil society organization and businesses in the Western Balkans. So that's very important. So you get the messages directly from the region through that publication. So thank you to Aspen and Southeast Europe Association and the civil society organizations in the Western Balkans. And with this, I would like to thank you very much, Ambassador, for this chat. I wish we had some more time to cover some more questions, but we have a picture and then a coffee break, I believe, or am I wrong? Okay, so we continue with the panel, and after that we have the coffee break, and you can all meet with the Ambassador. Thank you very much.
Thank you.